All right, well, we will go ahead and get started, and hopefully some more people will join us. My name is Delana Mullins-Maines, and I am the Director of Campaigns at the ACLU of Colorado. And if you have joined us for webinars, you may have heard my voice, not necessarily seen my face, because I let the experts speak for us here at the ACLU of Colorado, and you're going to meet some experts tonight on what we're going to be doing in the next 55 days, I believe it is. Anyways, how many of you already know who you're going to vote for on those top two spots? So I'm talking about president and Senate. So yeah, just raise your hand if you've already made that decision. Because I think a great majority of us have already made that decision. We know who we're going to vote for on those top two spots. What we don't know is all the other things on the ballot. We don't know about all those ballot initiatives and those lower races below president and Senate. And it is our job to become knowledgeable about those races because as advocates, activists, and volunteers, we need to let people know. People depend on us. They want to know what we think. We're the people they go to. So that's the purpose of tonight, to make sure that you have the information you need to let everyone know who they should vote for. I know you have someone in your family who calls you up and just says, tell me yes or no on this ballot initiative. Well, you want to be able to really be educated about what that yes or no is. So before we really dive in, I do want to remind everyone that the ACLU of Colorado is a nonpartisan nonprofit, which means we don't take positions on candidate races, but we do take positions on ballot initiatives, and we do educate people about the importance of certain elected positions. And we're going to talk all about that today. So I like numbers, as my team knows. And this is our 30th webinar. So if you've joined us for one of those webinars, congratulations. Thank you for coming to these. We kind of turned on a dime in March when everything started to lock down and we locked down. And we started doing these webinars, and we have been really just grateful for your participation in them. We were used to in-person events. We love seeing everyone in person. And pretty soon we're going to switch to a more interactive model of Zoom so that when we're doing outreach work, we're more together. It feels like when we were in the office and eating sexy pizza twice a week. So in this time period where we haven't been able to be together, we have done some remarkable work. We have, again, 30 webinars. Ranging everything from the census to repro rights to why you should vote no on 115 to the national popular vote, just a ton of information. We've done Know Your Rights on immigrant rights, policing, protesting, and these are all available at our Advocacy from Home page on our website. We have sent 15,000 texts asking people to take the census, and we helped get 13,000 emails sent to legislators about, excuse me, Senate Bill 2117. But now our work is focusing on the big thing that we're all focused on, November 3rd, which is 55 days away. Ballots drop in 29 days. These are numbers that we like because as it gets closer, it's like maybe we'll finally have some space to breathe and celebrate the work that we've all done together over the last 4 years. So we want everyone to be able to talk about these things intelligently to help us get out the word. And we are going to have all kinds of ways that you can help us get the word out and help us turn out civil liberty-minded voters. So with that being said, I'm going to tell you about my favorite ballot initiative this year. It is paid family leave. I firmly believe that if you don't have economic justice, it's really, really hard to access civil rights and civil liberties, because you're just trying to work to put food on the table, to take care of your family, to take care of yourself. Paid family leave has been something that we have been talking about and fighting for in Colorado for years. And finally, a coalition of groups got this on the ballot this year. It'll give us up to 12 weeks of leave. Smaller businesses will be exempt from it. It is an insurance program that is paid by the employer and the employee, and the premiums aren't going to start until 2023, so we can recover from this downturn in the economy. This proposal reflects what the task force came up with out of the legislature a couple of years ago. And we at the ACLU of Colorado are suggesting a yes vote on 118. I encourage you to learn more about Colorado's paid leave program through colorado's familyfirst.org. Great group of people working to make work more equitable for all of us. And you know, during this time, this COVID time, paid family leave really is something that has just stuck out as, you know, something that has been needed so much. I know a lot of us are struggling working from home with kids and schooling, and just a lot of extra work for all of us. So this could help us all a lot. And, you know, a lot of us have had to deal with some difficult situations taking care of family members who are sick. So hopefully we will see this in law after November. So next, I am going to introduce Jessica Howard. Jessica is going to talk about our Divest campaign. So Jessica used to be the paralegal at the ACLU of Colorado for about 6 years, and then she became our community education manager. Jessica is now working on our latest and greatest campaign, and that is our racial justice campaign. And she's going to tell us a little bit more about some of the stuff we're doing, but I want to tell you a little bit more about Jessica. She is a advocate for disability rights, and she's passionate about this. She has served on the Colorado Developmental Disabilities Council, the Denver Public Schools Special Education Advisory Council, and Disability Law Colorado's protection and advocacy system for individuals with mental illness. She holds a bachelor's degree in political science from the University of Colorado. We have that in common. And a paralegal certificate from the Community College of Aurora. Her other interests include photography, hiking, and trying new foods. So I'm going to turn it over to Jessica. But before I turn it over to Jessica, I forgot to ask you all one thing. How are you feeling about this election this year? Just give me a word, put it in the chat. Are you hopeful? I'm hopeful, but I'm scared. I was hopeful in 2016, and now I'm scared in 2020. So let's take a look and see what people are. What are these words? Nervous, scared, worried, exhausted. I feel young, exhausted, terrified, desperate to remove Trumpy, tired of the stakes increasing with every election, concerned, furious, afraid, hopeful, but not relying on hope to get us a win. Action paired with hope. I like that. That should be our campaign department motto. Determined in Durango. Hello from Durango, one of my favorite cities, or hello to Durango, one of my favorite cities. Heading for dictatorship. Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that way. So thank you for playing my little game here. I appreciate it. Hopefully what we can do for you is give you some ways to help out so that you feel like you've done everything you can on November 4th. You know, you're going to hear that a lot, right? This is the most important election year, and you don't want to wake up on November 4th not having done everything you could. Well, I know all of you are working really, really hard, and we just want to give you the tools to do, you know, the work you want to do. So I'm going to turn it over to Jessica now, and she's going to tell you all about our racial justice campaign and what we're doing.
Thank you, Delana, for that introduction, and thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. So This summer, we have seen protests and demonstrations in Colorado and throughout the country in response to police brutality, particularly against Black Americans whose lives appear to be taken unmercifully by law enforcement. Certainly the deaths of individuals like George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Elijah McClain and Aurora, and countless others have required all of us to really pay attention to the inequities and stark differences that some of us face on a daily basis. So while some of us can walk down the street to buy our favorite drink from a nearby convenience store, others, such as in the case of Elijah McClain, are deemed suspicious from the moment they step out of the door, with often brutal and fatal consequences. And so activists such as yourselves decide and go out and march. You attend rallies and you show up to city council meetings to express your distress of the current situation, but also to demand change. And here at the ACLU, we've been here every step to ensure that your civil rights are not being infringed upon as you engage in the political process. But of course, the results that we have seen, unfortunately, in response to the demonstrations and protests is even more increased police force and violence, particularly against peaceful protesters. And unfortunately, in some of these cases, we've witnessed situations where police look the other way, while others who wish to do us harm, particularly for protesters demanding change, have done so using, violence as a tool of silence. But of course, we won't be silenced. So what have we done here at the ACLU? Well, we've done a number of things. We've held Know Your Rights webinars on police encounters and protesters' rights. So this has included what people's rights are when they are detained by police during a protest, the right to record and how to protect your privacy while doing so, as well as how to file a complaint if you or someone you've witnessed is being treated poorly by law enforcement. But of course, we also have seen in these situations, police officers often escape liability because of qualified immunity, which is that legal doctrine that has prevented the community from holding officers responsible when they violate laws, policy, and the community trust. And so the ACLU's policy department team, leading along with more than 50 coalition partners, including families who have lost loved ones at the hands of police, supported the passage of Senate Bill 217, which was the Law Enforcement Accountability Act, which really demanded that officers be held accountable to the communities they serve. But we also have filed a lawsuit. We filed a lawsuit back in June against the City and County of Denver on behalf of Black Lives Matter 5280 and individual plaintiffs who were injured by police while protesting against the police violence back in late May and June. The officers' unjustified attacks not only violated protesters' First and Fourth Amendment rights, but they even violated the department's own internal use of force policies when they were both causing physical and emotional injuries with the use of tear gas and firing dangerous projectiles really indiscriminately in the crowds, and with little regard to protesters' safety and their life. And in doing so, the police just end up widening the chasm of distrust between the community and police. But even with all these tactics of public education, public policy, and litigation, we know and understand that this cannot be the end all, be all, end all, and we recognize that even more has to be done in response to police brutality. And so if we go, to the next slide, essentially what we want to do during, this fall is we would like to invite you to have a conversation with us about how we arrived to this point where we are having to become so heavily reliant on policing to solve society's problems, and what a new vision of safety can look like, and how you can hold public officials accountable as activists for creating the type of change that the community is calling for. So please, what you see here, save the following dates for our Lunch and Learn webinar series that will begin in October. We'll be sending more information in the coming weeks, but we're going to start off our webinar on October 8th, where we're going to talk about the historic role of policing in society. And that will be followed by another conversation about Defund Divest 101. You hear these terms probably in the media and you're probably wondering, what does this all mean? And so we're going to have a conversation about that. And afterwards, we're going to follow up with, then how can we use our advocacy skills now that we have the education that we need to then start demanding more accountability from our local politicians if we really want to hold police accountable, or if we want to see a vision where community is more, it's more in the hands of community to determine how we solve some of the things that that we deem most important. So I'm just going to leave that here. Again, save the following dates. We're going to continue to have this conversation, continue to move the ball forward, and I'll be really excited to see you join us. Thank you.
All right.
Sorry about that, Julian. I want to introduce you.
No worries. I can do it myself too.
We have, you know, technical problems. Even though we've done 30 of these, none have gone off without a hitch. And we thank you all for the patience you have shown us when we have these little technical difficulties. So Julian is next. And Julian Camera is our field organizer at the ACLU of Colorado. Before he had this position, he was our admin assistant, and we all relied on him heavily. We rely on him even more heavily now. He probably thought he might, you know, getting a promotion might mean less work. He's discovering that's not true. He works on a variety of statewide and national campaigns with the intent to build strength in community and gather around common civil liberties and civil rights issues. Julian received a degree in communications and anthropology at the University of Colorado, Denver. We have that in common, that we both went to CU Denver, and was a part of the Denver Foundation's nonprofit internship program where he worked for Urban Gardens. And that was to make sure everyone has access to good quality, fresh food. Julian is the foodie of the office. If you want to know the good food, you talk to Julian. He has organized and advocated for LGBTQ plus people with a focus on transgender rights. And his passion for advocacy goes beyond one issue and strongly believes that we are as good as our most marginalized community, and therefore we must empower all communities to live their best lives. That's a great quote, Julian. Did you write that?
I did, but we need to take out the marginalized and change it to impacted community.
Impacted, okay. Okay. We're all discovering tonight that we need to update our bios. So, so Julian, you take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Delana. Thank you for that introduction. I don't think I could have done as well as that. And I do love food. So I'm going to talk to you about two ballot initiatives. One is a yes vote, one is a no vote. So I do encourage you to, you know, make a mental note or write down the number, but also whether you're going to vote yes or no, or what we're encouraging you to vote yes or no on it. You know, because you get to the ballot and you get really confused about what was I going to vote on this. So yes, if you can write it down, we'll go ahead and go on to the next slide, Delina. So on the ballot this November is Amendment 76. It's the citizenship requirement for voting. The Constitution currently says every citizen can vote. This initiative aims to amend the Constitution to say only citizens can vote. So the way this will read on the ballot, shall there be an amendment to the Colorado Constitution requiring that to be qualified to vote at any election, an individual must be a United States citizen. So I want to get initial feel from our volunteers and activists. Do you think that non-citizens currently vote in Colorado elections? You can go ahead and put your answer in the chat. Don't be ashamed. We all have different thoughts on this. So just your initial thought. We're getting a lot of no's so far. No, no, no. Right. Yeah, someone said no, but an HOH and local. Well, we'll get into that bit. But yeah, We have one yes with a question mark, not sure, absolutely not. Correct, yep, absolutely not. No, but they should be able to. Yes, Amanda, no. Okay, this is really refreshing to see, yes, and clearly I would expect nothing less of ACLU activists and volunteers. So clearly y'all are, paying attention and doing your homework. But there's a lot of, false narratives out there, a lot of mixed messaging. The truth is, current Colorado law does not allow for undocumented folks to vote in our elections. Colorado is one of 30 states recognized as a home rule state where we have the ability to grant municipalities the ability to exercise local control of their individual governments, meaning one day we could decide to allow undocumented folks to participate in local elections where, they send their kids to school or they're directly impacted by a particular ballot issue. So when it comes to the narrative of voting fraud, it is extremely rare. Voting fraud in the US makes up less than 0.0025%. So the idea that non-citizens are voting in our elections and that this is something that we should be highly concerned about, it's a false narrative. And the proposers of this amendment really want to push that false narrative to try and scare people and to push a xenophobic, anti-immigrant agenda. So next slide, please. So what would Amendment 76 immediate impacts be? Because a citizen is defined as someone who is 18 and over, Amendment 76 would take away the ability for 17-year-olds to vote in our primary elections, shall they be 18 by the time of the general. So this law was part of the Colorado Votes Act. It went into effect August of 2019. So it's literally been barely a year that 17-year-olds have been able to engage in our elections, which is amazing. It's exciting. It would also take away the ability for 16-year-olds to participate in school board elections, which was pushed for in SV2 a few years back. So this is a clear attempt at youth voter suppression when we're actively working to engage in our youth in our elections and get them familiar with our democracy. So next slide, please. What are the lasting impacts of 76? So not only is 76 going to push a false narrative, it's also going to create confusion amongst immigrant voters who are citizens, further disenfranchising a group of people who we want to engage in our elections and have the right to engage in our elections. 76 would also put a permanent limit on who can participate in our elections. So, school board elections, we wouldn't be able to have 16, 17-year-olds. We wouldn't be able to have, non-citizens participating in those. So the result of this is not only voter suppression, but xenophobia. Next slide, please. So why Colorado? The Constitution was written with a very clear understanding of the difference between a citizen and a non-citizen. So every citizen can vote. That language is in the Constitution of 48 states. Arizona and North Dakota have amended their constitutions to say only, and we could be next. But it's important to know citizens vote. That's the campaign behind this amendment. It's funded by a Florida-based organization with a ton of money, and they're working to change the Constitution state by state. And because Colorado is a leading state for election law and protection, they felt they could target voters in our state and set the tone for future states who are proposed with this amendment. Next slide, please. So we're encouraging you to absolutely vote no on this amendment. A lot of people are confused by the language of this initiative and its impact, and therefore defeating this ballot measure will be a fight that we're willing to take on, but we can't do it without your help. So if you'd like to join our campaign, please email me. Our goal is to get as many students, youth voters, immigrants, Colorado voters involved in our campaign as possible. And you can also join our campaign launch. It's on September 24th. We're going to hold a press conference. We'll send out more details for that. So on to our yes vote. So also on the ballot is National Popular Vote, Proposition 113, which aims to elect the presidential candidate by the most popular votes nationwide. So a little background, In 2019, the Colorado legislature passed SB 42, declaring that a presidential candidate should be chosen by the national popular vote. In order for the law to go into effect, states must vote in favor of the idea until the combined supporting states make up 270 out of 538 electoral college votes. The supporting states will then commit to assign their presidential electors to the candidate with the most individual votes nationwide. So in the 2020 election, this is going to be on the ballot. And the explanation is confusing, I'm sure, so feel free to ask questions at the end during our Q&A. But the ACLU of Colorado, we absolutely support a yes on national popular vote because we believe in the fundamental principle of one person, one vote. The way we have it now is, a vote in Wyoming might have a greater impact than a vote in Colorado, and we don't feel that to be fair. The Electoral College is also an antiquated relic of slavery. It was created during the drafting of the Constitution in 1787 for the sole purpose of accounting for a slave population that was prohibited from voting. So delegates argued that if elections were based off of a popular vote, southern states with high slave populations would have little influence on elections. So this led to the creation of the 3/5 clause, which calculated five slaves to count as 3 free men, giving southern states more power in elections. So this election, we can change yet another system that was built on slavery and oppression and live up to the true definition of a democracy where every vote is counted equally. So that is why we support a yes on national popular vote. And I will pass it back to Delana.
All right, thanks, Julian. Next up is the one and only Jen Samano. Jen has been around the ACLU for what, 3 years now? Well, okay. She's our campaign coordinator. She mainly works on voting rights, but she does so much more. She is a community organizer and civil rights advocate from when she fought for more space on the carpet in elementary school. And prior to working for the ACLU, she was a campaign organizer for Planned Parenthood of the Rocky Mountains. And she is also our privacy advocate. If you want to know something about privacy and technology, you should talk to Jen. She previously worked as an intern with SEIU Local 105, where she helped fight for fair wages. She is relentlessly dedicated to Coloradans' voting rights, women's access to healthcare, and independent journalism. Take it away, Jen.
Thank you, Delana. So I'm going to talk about our Vote Your DA campaign, and DA means district attorney, which we will define. And before we go into kind of the goals and strategies of the campaign, we'll just define it as this. It's a voter education and mobilization campaign. And it's to inform voters on the function and powers of this office primarily, and then also share with them the candidates' positions on key civil liberties policies / issues. And we are focusing on 2 specific judicial districts this year, which I will talk about. Next slide, please. And yes, I know I'm touching my face, but I've been so quarantined. Don't worry, everyone. Okay, so on your screen, you have a definition of district attorney, and I'm actually going to read it because I think it's kind of grounding. Okay, so district attorney is a public official appointed or elected as the chief prosecutor to represent the state government in criminal cases within their jurisdiction. So again, you can think of this as a prosecutor, or you can think of prosecutorial reform. However, there are so many types of prosecutors, it's important that we use Colorado's language of district attorney, or that's why we're using it. And district attorneys, again, are public officials. Keep that in mind. And they're really important kind of kingpins in the criminal legal system, right? They have single-handedly have a ton of power when it comes to influencing sentencing decisions, and the policies they implement within their office often contribute to mass incarceration. So obviously the inverse is then true too, right? So the power is the policies that they create. And if right now they're creating mass incarceration, they could obviously do the opposite by decarcerating. How could they do that? You might be wondering. Well, here's your teaser. If you want to get more involved with the campaign, you'll have a more in-depth educational portion of district attorneys. This is super brief, but two really important examples of ways district attorneys could make a huge difference in the criminal legal system and therefore the racism and classism we deal with in our country. So one example, which if you've been involved with ACLU and our reform work, you know about this. District attorneys could adopt bail reform policies that would not, for example, incarcerate people for crimes of poverty or crimes of homelessness, instead not holding them in jail. They could also recommend diversion programs for our neighbors experiencing, let's say, opioid addiction, which is rising again with this pandemic, rather than incarceration, which leads to recidivism and, quite frankly, is expensive for us as taxpayers and the person who's directly impacted. They could recommend a diversion program that's more rehabilitative. You get it. However, so we see this huge opportunity for change, but only 70% of DA candidates run uncontested, even though all political parties who have been polled, which are independents, Republicans, and Democrats, continually show strong support for criminal legal reform. So what we see is a gap here, right? We have strong appetite even before this year for criminal legal reform on all sides of the aisle, yet we have district attorneys who run uncontested. Next slide, please. Okay, and that brings us to our goal, or this gap is what our campaign is seeking to fill, starting to do that work. For people to be informed voters and for people to make a sustained impact, then they have to understand what we're even working on in the first place. What is the function of a district attorney? What's the history? What are the roles and responsibilities? And therefore, where are the opportunities for change? So again, our goal is here to educate target voters and other ACLUers on primarily a function of this office, and then where candidates fall on the spectrum of reform by asking them questions directly. It's really important to realize that this campaign, the Vote Your DA campaign, and kind of the election work in general, serves really important role in supporting and accelerating, bolstering, whatever verb you want to use, the rest of our policy priorities and our racial justice campaign. This is a strategy and a campaign with strategies within a larger movement of reform and then racial justice. So just keep that in mind. And there is me reading my strategy books on the right side of your screen. Next slide, please. Okay. So again, you've kind of heard it a couple times here, but we have two prongs to this campaign in terms of strategy. The first one is education. This is really important. We have to go back to the basics here. And when we're talking about district attorneys, what does that mean? It's just alluded to. We're in a moment of a movement of racial reckoning, and within that, at least hopefully, and we have been seeing it. An awakening for white folks and white allies specifically. And with that, off of that, people who are fortunate enough to never get tied up in the criminal legal system really need this education on what district attorneys do. Because unfortunately, people who are targeted by the criminal legal machine, they know well what a district attorney does. Okay, so the first, on the left side of your screen, you see we need to educate voters. And I've kind of already said this, so you can read it. And the second part I've talked about less, which is candidate accountability. And what does that mean? Again, we are nonpartisan. So what does that look like? Just because we're nonpartisan doesn't mean we can't engage with politicians. We just don't focus on their personalities. We focus on their policy positions, which is also a really refreshing thing to do, especially when we live in a country that's a cult of personality, if I can editorialize. Like, we're going back to function, power, and candidate accountability. No matter where you lie, will you agree to adopt decarceration policies? We don't care who you are. Will you agree to adopt this because voters want it? And it's a really important time to do this work, because during the lead up to someone getting elected to office, they're the most likely to change their position or get them to agree to positions. And it's most important time that we actually know their positions, right? So we can be informed. And again, because we've historically not engaged in these elections, we as in general voters and especially civil liberties advocates, it's really important that we get loud, that we put pressure on to make sure candidates see our issues and then hopefully take commitments on them. And particularly, we want commitments and we want to raise the issues of population reduction, and we want DAs to commit to that, and to adopt policies of transparency. So collecting data that shows race, gender identity, housing status, stuff like simple things like that, making investigative reports extra transparent. And you can see both population reduction and transparency goals feed into our racial justice goals. Again, this is all on a web. And so I will end with this slide with this is one of the ways that we're doing that is I'm working with our really awesome, badass policy team to create candidate questionnaires, which we will give to candidates. And then we'll make sure that voters are getting that information via an educational website. Next slide, please. Okay, so we have on here, we're focusing in on 2 judicial districts. I think last time I checked, there's about 5 contested districts in Colorado this cycle. And so this cycle, we're taking on 2. Judicial District 1, which is Jefferson and Gilpin counties, and then Judicial District 18, which is Arapahoe, Douglas, Elbert, and Lincoln counties. So if you live in those counties, or if you know people who live in those counties who are friendly to civil rights, civil liberties, let us know. We'll show you how. And after I'm done talking, I'll put my contact in the chat. It's really important that we find voters in this community to help spread the word about our campaign and the work that our partners are doing on this campaign. And so why these districts? Honestly, the answer is simple, is that we have a lot of members in these districts and we're hearing from you that you want us to do this work. We have important policy priorities. So these are the first 2 districts of this new campaign, and we look forward to continuing this work in the next cycle. So thank you very much. And I will pass it back to my boss, Delana.
Funny. Thank you, Jen. And there was a question in the chat. Jen is referring to depopulating jails and prisons, not the state of Colorado. So and we're going to move on now to our No on 115 campaign. And this is something that so many of us in this office feel passionately about and are working on. And you're going to hear from Lizzie Hinckley, who is our Reproductive Rights Policy Counsel and just an absolute fierce advocate for reproductive rights. One of my favorite pictures of Lizzie is her talking to a reporter when we went to, well, I didn't go, but when the ACLU went to Washington, D.C. to protest against the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh, which is something we rarely do, but I love that picture. She graduated from the University of Virginia Law School in 2012. She served as a Dillard Fellow for the Legal Research and Writing Program. She is an amazing writer and was a Public Interest Law Association grant recipient, interned at the Equal Opportunity Commission and the Department of Justice and the Legal Aid Justice Center in Charlottesville. She's originally from Boston suburbs, and she graduated summa cum laude from George Washington University with a BA in International Affairs and worked as a paralegal at the Department of Justice for 2 years prior to law school. I didn't know that, and you said your thing was out of date. There, now I know something new about you. Joining her in this journey is Cassandra Rendon Morales, who is our Reproductive Rights Campaign Coordinator. And she fights every day to make sure Coloradans have reproductive freedom. Before joining us at the ACLU, she was at CALOR, a reproductive justice Latina-led, Latina-serving grassroots organization. She taught comprehensive sex ed to ages 9 through 21, organized and managed year-round issue-based campaigns in the Westminster area, and worked directly with Latina youth. She holds a bachelor's degree in leadership development, no, I'm reading that wrong, sorry. holds a bachelor's degree in women's studies and Spanish from the University of Nevada, Reno, and she is passionate about mobilizing young people and disrupting the school to prison pipeline. So I'm going to let them take this away, and this is one of the most important things you will vote on this year, so take it away, ladies.
Thank you, Delana. Would you just mind switching to the next slide, please? All right, so thank you everyone for being here. Cass and I are going to talk to you about Proposition 115 that you will see on your ballots dropping shortly. So this first slide, what is Prop 115? So if you've been in Colorado for a couple of years, you've probably already had to vote on an abortion ban that's on the ballot. This is just another abortion ban. It marks the 4th time that Coloradans are being asked to vote on abortion ban on the ballot since 2008. This particular ban is different than the last few, which were called personhood abortion bans. This one is a ban on abortion later in pregnancy. It bans abortion at 22 weeks without an exception for when the pregnant person is a survivor of rape or incest, without exception for the health concerns of the pregnant person, and without exception for when the pregnant person is receiving a lethal fetal diagnosis. Prop 115, if it passes, will criminalize medical providers in Colorado. It imposes criminal penalties on abortion providers, which includes fines as well as the suspension of their medical license for no less than 3 years. It is a political attack brought to us by the same folks who try year after year to ban all abortion in Colorado, and it is not based in medical fact. Next slide, please. So why should you vote no on 115? So anyone who's known anyone who's been pregnant knows that every pregnancy is unique, and decisions about pregnancy should be made by the pregnant person with the support of their family, in consultation with their doctor, but certainly not made by politicians who do not know them, do not know their life, do not know the complexity of the situation that they are dealing with. No on 115 is a one-size-fits-all ban. The lack of exceptions that I spoke about just a moment ago mean that it doesn't allow for the complexity of individual circumstances. It is devoid of compassion for pregnant people who are facing life events or medical issues that they need to have all of their options available to them. And it forces pregnant people to continue a pregnancy no matter what. It makes the decision for them. The wording of this initiative, as you will shortly see, is very confusing, and that was intentional by the proponents. They're banking that people are going to be confused and misread the proposition as a reasonable compromise and vote for it. We're here to tell you, don't be tricked. It is an initiative that's backed by the same exact politicians and extremist groups that have tried and failed to ban all abortion, not just abortion later in pregnancy. They try to ban all abortion every single year in the legislature and every few years at the ballot. This might be of special importance to folks on this call. There is no doubt that Proposition 115 and any ban on later abortion like this is unconstitutional. There's no question that under Roe versus Wade, a ban pre-fetal viability is unconstitutional, period. And a ban post-viability must include an exception for when the health of the pregnant person is in danger. 115 is unconstitutional for both of those reasons. There is no exception for the health of the pregnant person. Unfortunately, if you've been following this presidential administration, you will know that the federal courts are now packed with judges who are anti-abortion, who are unwilling to uphold nearly 50 years of precedent, and who cannot be relied upon to strike down Prop 115 as unconstitutional if it becomes law. For that reason, we're really stressing that the only way to stop Proposition 115 is at the ballot. We need the votes to vote it down because we can no longer rely on federal courts. If successful, this proposition will open up a floodgate of anti-abortion laws, both in Colorado and nationally. We know that from proponents of Prop 115's own words that they see this as getting their foot in the door of banning all abortion outright in Colorado. We also know that because Colorado is one of only 7 states that does not currently have gestational limits in law, we know that if Prop 115 is successful here, the proponents of it are taking it to those other states where abortion later in pregnancy is still legal, and they're going to try and outlaw it everywhere. So a lot is at stake both in Colorado and nationally when it comes to abortion access for abortion later in pregnancy. And we are hoping that you will join the ACLU as well as a robust coalition of our partners from the Reproductive Health Rights and Justice Coalition in defeating Proposition 115. And I'm going to pass it off to Cass.
Yes, so you're probably asking yourself, how can we join, to stop this ban? So today, what we're asking you to do is to text no bans to 33777. That way we know that you're interested in helping us fight this horrible abortion ban. By texting this number, you're joining an ACLU exclusive list, which Delana and I, Lizzie, have access to. So through this texting list, you'll get updates, you'll get direct phone banking opportunities, texting opportunities. So all you have to do is text no bans to 33777. You can also learn more about this proposition by going to voteno115.com and signing up that way. All you have to do is submit your email on the website. There's a bunch of resources. There are a lot of different ways you can also take action. I encourage you to click on that website tonight and just sign up to get those campaign updates as well. And then you can join us next Tuesday, September 15th at 6 p.m. We are going to be launching our first phone bank to reach out to Colorado voters to help us stop this ban. And again, the easiest way to just get information directly from us is by texting no bans to 33777. And then if you have phone banked in the past, we want you for this phone bank on Tuesday. If you've never phone banked, that's okay. I will be there. We will train you. And it starts at 6 p.m. It's from 6 to 8. All you have to do is click on this link and we will get you signed up. I will also drop this direct bit.ly link into the chat so you can open it up there. We'll make sure to include it in our follow-up email. And that's all I have. I'll pass it back to Jelena.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Cass and Lizzie. So Cass kind of gave us a little teaser about how you can get involved, but we're going to talk a little bit more about that. We really want to make sure all civil liberty minded voters know how to vote, or at least know what we think about these different ballot measures. So it's a little bit confusing when we're saying vote no on 115 and vote yes on this. So in the coming weeks, we will be releasing a digital voter guide so that you can just click on that and see what we think, maybe compare it with other organizations that you support and believe in. So I believe we're bringing Jen and Julian back up for this last part. Is that correct? Well, you gotta take yourself off mute, my friend.
Those tests.
You know, how many times a day? Is that the phrase of 2020?
Take yourself off mute.
You're on mute? I think it is.
I like
I'm
to
gonna go.
I can lip read. I'm kind of good at it. Thank you, 2020. Okay, so how to get involved, how to win, how to take action. I know someone originally with Delana asked that intro question, like, you know, someone responded hope with action, not just relying on hope. So that's what we're going to talk about. And there are several tactics that we're going to be looking at. And I just also realized I neglected to put on, although we're still fleshing out the program, so verbally, we are encouraging and kind of challenging folks to do ACLU ballot parties, which would just mean organizing your friends and family, whether that's a couple people or more, in a safe, socially distanced way, aka virtually, to sit down and go through our voter guide and fill out their ballots together. So that is definitely a tactic that we're going to be kicking up once ballots go out. And I again neglected to put on this PowerPoint, so my apologies. And also, before I get into this, you'll be like, how can I sign up? Where can I go? I'm sure. And so we have a general 2020 sign up form that kind of covers all of the stuff that you've seen so far. And it will also cover all the tactics and volunteer opportunities I'm about to get into. So keep that in mind, that there's one form where you can be like, I'm interested in this campaign and I like doing this type of work. And it's really helpful for us as the campaign staff to have that information from you on that form. Okay, so back to the slides. Direct voter contact. This means actually talking to people who are voting. Crazy idea. Just kidding, it was a great idea. So we do this through phone banking and now text banking. So you have some options if you're a phones person, if you know already you prefer text, if you think you're one, you are the other, if you want to do both, all of those options are there for you. And who are we calling exactly? We are calling ACLU members and then some other target voters. And these target voters are voters that are like ACLU members. So we don't cold call randoms, they're targeted, they just need some extra information. And what are we talking about during these phone and text banks? It's direct voter contact. We're talking about several things. We have different types of phone banks. For example, as Cassandra was just talking about, we're gonna have more educational phone banks talking about, hey, what does this abortion ban do and why you should vote no? Doing more educational tailored phone banking, perhaps on No on 76, the Only Citizens Can Vote initiative. And then we're between phone banks, text banks, targeting district voters in our district attorney races. And then we're also in all of our phone banks, they're going to be we're going to give information to voters on how to vote and where to vote. So giving that essential information. And then your third or fourth type of phone bank that you'll participate in is just turning people out to vote. So when we get closer to election day, it'll be, hey, did you get your ballot? Here's your closest drop box. Yes, you can register on the same day. So giving that it's essential information, which leads us into why. Phone banking and this direct voter contact, especially as a trusted people to trusted people, means that it's a form of voter protection, because we're giving that information and kind of cutting through disinformation that might be online or in the news. And it's also really important because if you've ever voted in Colorado, you know our ballot is very long and it overwhelms people to the point where they might not want to fill it out. So we're really providing an essential service to help make that ballot more accessible by calling people and talking to them. And how to do this, again, that sign up sheet, and then you all are plugged in with us. We'll be bothering you about them for sure. Who can do this? Anyone with a phone and with a computer with internet or tablet, what have you. No experience is required. We will train you, we'll support you, and like Delana said, we'll do this in kind of a communal way so we can all hang out together and troubleshoot. Next slide, please. Okay, another tactic or volunteer opportunity is writing letters to the editor. So these are kind of the shorter opinion pieces that you'll see in local newspapers. And why we do this and why this is a great way, or this is a great tactic, is because it helps us amplify issues and counter misinformation. You know, let's say someone was in there previously with a letter to the editor saying that we are having so much voter fraud by non-citizens voting in elections they're not supposed to vote in. Okay, that's where we come in, or a dedicated volunteer would come in and help counter that misinformation. And we also provide templates for those who want them, so you don't have to do this completely from scratch. And again, anyone can do it, but especially the people who like writing, come aboard. Next slide, please. Delana? Oh, did I lose internet? Oh, there we go. Oh, okay. Another opportunity is doing literature drops. You have some information on your screen there, but what this means is we'll have door hangers or other types of campaign material that will say, hey, don't forget these are the important voting dates. District attorneys matter. Find out more about the positions here. Here's our voter guide. So providing that essential information, but just dropping it at target voters' doors. We're not knocking on doors to have conversations. This is the COVID way to do canvassing for us at the ACLU. And again, anyone can, or this is people who are comfortable walking, come on board, indicate your interest on our volunteer form. Next slide, please. Okay, this program, there's 3 exclamation points in this slide, so you know where I'm excited about it. Julian, please feel welcome to chime in here. We're launching this program. It's called that we're inviting people to join this voice network. And so what this is all about is organizing your own people. So I'm sure, and Delana had said this, you might be that person that everyone's just asking you how to vote or what's going on in the news. I know I'm that person for a lot of folks, even before this work. And so it's like, okay, there's that hunger within your own community. How can we be intentional and how can we bring those people aboard so we can expand our reach and our power? And so what this stands for, VOICE, is vote, organize, inspire, community, and engage. And community we are using as a verb because it is in action. It's to be in community with one another. And so we really need you all and your relationships and connections to help expand our reach. So many times people come to us, how can I help? You know, I'm not legal minded, but I can help. And often what's most helpful is helping us expand our work by talking to people you already know. And we do this in a really, again, strategic way that it's not just like, oh, talk to this person or that. It's a measurable way to have an impact. And as you can see under the why, if you ask your friends and family in Colorado to, let's say, vote, they are 22% more likely to do that than if just, let's say, I did it as an ACLU representative. So the impact is, again, measurable. You can indicate your interest again on the volunteer form, and we're going to start launching this program in about late September, early October, so closer when ballots get out so we can be prepared. And the thing is, you might be asking who can do this program of working directly with campaign staff to organize your own Colorado community members. This is any ACLUer who's civil liberties minded and has some Coloradans in their network who are also civil liberties minded. Okay, we're doing it, Delana? Okay. Very briefly, because this is essential information for all of us, we're going to go over the top lines of Colorado-specific voting rights, just because we know that there's a lot of anxiety out there. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a chart showing, I'm going to try to be brief here because we want to get to your questions, is showing Colorado's ballot system, voting system, and the way that we receive ballots in Colorado, right? And so when you're hearing tons of confusion, right? There's misinformation because people are just, I'm talking countrywide, are confused because their states are now changing absentee voting laws, or you have to request a mail-in ballot by this date. That does not apply to Colorado. Colorado has not had to make any massive or significant changes in our voting system. You will vote this year almost exactly as you have voted every year if you voted in Colorado. And that is really, really important to remember. The most effective thing we can do to counter the confusion and the disinformation that keep people from voting is to bring it back locally to Colorado. Distinguish our system from others. Give them the clarifying information. For example, all people who are registered to vote receive ballots in Colorado. And they can return them by Dropbox, which is most popular and most recommended, anywhere in Colorado. So if you vote on the eastern slope or the eastern plains, but you happen to be out on the western slope with your ballot, you can drop it off at a Dropbox there, and it will still be counted in your district. You can return using USPS. The recommendation is to send that no later than October 26th, because in Colorado, postmarks do not count. And again, it's important, especially from the ACLU perspective, to realize that in-person voting options remain in Colorado, which is really important, again, for people who maybe spoiled their ballot, they're registering to vote, especially the day of, and voters who have a right to receive accommodations like language assistance. And we can go to the next slide. More in Colorado, we have almost about 3 weeks of early voting, and our ballots start mailing October 9th, so you'll get them about the beginning of the next week. And the only another date is that October 26th date, so that's the last date to return your ballot by mail, but it's also the last day that you can either update your registration or newly register online and still receive a ballot in the mail. Now, obviously, if you did that and received your ballot in the mail after the 26th, you would go return it at a Dropbox or vote in person. Okay, these last three are really important. Colorodo's voting system was overhauled with a bill passed in 2013, implemented in 2014, and this was a bipartisan effort. So this false narrative that is created now that that this is a partisan ploy is total BS. The other thing is Coloradans love our system, and we mostly use Dropboxes. It's something we're proud of. Leading to the next, Colorado is a national leader in elections administration. Our current Secretary of State has been training other states and running all of the news circuits, kind of teaching others on how to do elections properly, or not properly, but most efficiently, most accessibly, most just. Next slide, please. These are some 2020 specific tips really quickly. And again, emphasizing the top one, no Colorado, no co. Cut down on this confusion by clarifying for others and keeping it local. What happens in Colorado? About 3 weeks and 3 ways to vote here. And the primaries were an excellent example. We were the most successful state in the country when it came to primaries. Another thing is to check to make sure your mailing address is up to date. You can have your ballot mailed somewhere different than where you're the resident or the district in which you're voting. So if you're in a caretaking situation that puts you either in Maine or puts you across the mountain range, then you can update your mailing address and still receive your ballot in this new location. We all know so many lives have been tumbled this year. So this is really important. This last one I'm going to harp on, and the rest you can be proud, confident, and encouraging of other voters to counter disinformation. We can't go into this with a losing attitude. You want to be calm, confident, and proud. I grew up by Wrigley Field as a Cubs fan. A losing attitude really does have an effect. So we want to display, especially because we're advocates on this call, display for others confidence and strength in voting. And make sure you're talking to others about it and use a Dropbox. And I think that was my last slide. Oh, resources. We can send these slides out after. A lot of you might know this, but as you can see, all of these resources are very state specific. If you're looking for Colorado specific information, try and do state specific because people in Colorado are used to our specific voting system, especially that justvotecolorado.org. That's like a really, really great resource for knowing your voting rights, asking questions. You can call or text their hotline, and you can find your Dropbox there.
Thank you, Jen. That's great information. So we're almost done tonight with our presentation. If you have any questions, you can put them in the Q&A box. one thing I do want to ask is I want to do a little poll. What is the most important issue to you this year? And it should be coming up on your screen right now. So is it no on 115, opposing the abortion ban? No on 76, permanent citizenship requirement, try to say that a few times, for voting and removing the rights of 17-year-olds to vote. Vote your DA, racial justice education. Go ahead and take a moment to do this poll with us. And I'm going to look at the chat while you're all doing that to see if there's anything in here. As we've said throughout the night, tomorrow we will be sending a link to the recording, the slides, and other resources. There is a question about the effort to organize volunteers to pick up ballots and get them to the ballot drop box. And Jen, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I do believe you're only allowed to deliver 10 ballots. Is that 9 plus yours or 10 plus yours?
It's 9 plus yours, but, and well, actually I'll get clarity from a county clerk before I share something speculative, but yeah.
So a lot of, like I take my family's ballots and I stand over them and yell until they fill it out and then tell them they're doing it wrong. No. But yeah, so there's not ever really, maybe check with your local political party to see if they're doing something like that. That's not something we do. But I do encourage you, if you have family members who maybe can't get out, help them get those ballots back. And I'm reading something about your Oregon. They report to you shirt, t-shirt promoting DA race awareness. You can wear any shirt you want. We are a free speech organization. We love free speech. And let's see. As far as like how much postage, it's usually 2 stamps. It depends on how many sheets of paper are in there. But really, the best way to return your ballot is to drop it off at a drop box, because then once it's in that drop box, they clear those drop boxes out every single night. And in a couple of days, you can do a track your ballot application on your county's website, on the Secretary of State's website. You can see that your ballot was received, and then you're done. You're like, I'm done. And another great thing is once you turn in your ballot, any campaign worth its weight is going to take you off their list and stop bothering you. So, and I love that mod that it's an ACLU of Oregon t-shirt. That's great. We love the ACLU of Oregon. Okay, so it looks like most of you, it's pretty evenly split, but we do have a lot of people who are interested in all ACLU issues. So that is wonderful. We love to hear that. A lot of folks interested in the No on 115 campaign and national popular vote. Jen said that was important. Okay, so we're going to end that poll and we're going to do another poll. Let's see, I have to read. This is a new thing for us. Darn it. I don't know why it's not working. Let's see. You all have to read. No, I'm not going to make you do that, but I'm trying to find the second poll. We have another poll. Let's see. Can somebody raise their hand if they can see other questions on the poll? Sometimes the Zoom webinars, the secret they don't tell you is I don't always see what all of you are seeing. So I'm going to see here if there's, We'll see if I can get the second question up here. If not, it is a question about how you can help us and how you want to help us. So we're going to share the results on this poll for you. You can see what we got there on that one. So unfortunately, it's not coming up. Second technical difficulty of the night. I apologize. But what you can do is go to our voter form, our activist form that Jen, would you pop that link in the chat one more time, Jen? And on there, you can tell us how you want to help us. Do you want to text? Do you want a phone bank? Do you want to do our new Voice Network program. Do you want to drop lit? All of these are options that are available to you, and we would love it if you were involved with us. We know you have a lot of choices this year to be involved in this work, and we're honored when you choose us to do the work. And are there any opportunities to organize text banking? Yes, we might be able to set up a special text bank for you and your friends and family. Go ahead and email Julian. The language on 115, Lizzie or Cass, did you drop that into the chat box at some point? And do we provide lit to counties? We provide it to our lit droppers, and then they go to the specific county that we are dropping lit in. And we believe we're going to be doing that in JD 18 this year, which is probably in an area around Aurora. So, all right. Well, we want to honor your time, and it is 7:15. If there's any last questions, we'd love to answer them, but you can always get in touch with us. The folks have put up their email addresses throughout the night, but tomorrow, everyone who signed up for this webinar is going to get slides, a copy of the recording, and lots of links and lots of ways that you can get involved. And I'm just going to check the chat. And Ashley H., we will, Jen has taken notice of your email address. And we thank you all for joining us tonight, and thank you all for all the work you do, because we know that without you, we are really nothing. So thanks so much for coming tonight and for the work you do, because I do know most of you are doing multiple things, working on multiple campaigns, and you're just leaving it all in the field, to use a football reference. So thank you all so much. And now go enjoy your evening, and we will see you next week on the 15th, we hope. Thanks.
I'm coming, baby.